After a disappointing loss to cap off a disappointing season, the New Orleans Saints are on to what will be the most uncertain offseason in quite some time. And you know what? It's going to be a lot of fun. We got all that and a little bit of lagniappe for you on today's episode of Locked On Saints.
You are Locked On Saints, your daily New Orleans Saints podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is good, Who Dat Nation and Who Dat family? Welcome into another episode of Locked On Saints, your daily podcast covering your favorite team, the New Orleans Saints, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Thanks so much as always, making Locked On Saints your first listen of the day every day. Don't forget we're free and available on all podcast apps and on YouTube as well. And I'm your host, Ross Jackson, at Ross Jackson Nola on Twitter, your New Orleans Saints expert, credential member of the media, CrescentCitySports.com, USA Today Saints Wire, Tuesdays on Locked On NFL, and here with you every single Monday through Friday on Locked On Saints. And this podcast is sponsored by BetterHelp. It's not a crisis line. It's not self-help. It's professional therapy done securely online, available to people worldwide. And they also have an offer just for our listeners. Get 10% off of your first month at betterhelp.com/lockedon. Tell you more about them later. Today's episode, we're going to take a look at a couple of different things. We're going to discuss what's going on here with the podcast as we go into the offseason. We'll also catch up on the big news from over the weekend. Sean Payton requesting, or the Denver Broncos requesting to speak with Sean Payton. Michael Thomas's contract being reworked. What does that mean for the Saints? We'll take a look at what changes need to happen this offseason. But let's start off with just looking at how uncertain this offseason is. It is the most uncertain offseason that we have really experienced probably since the 2006 offseason, before Sean Payton was hired, before Drew Brees was signed, and before Reggie Bush was drafted. Even last offseason, I would say that wasn't as uncertain as this one is. The New Orleans Saints had Sean Payton kind of surprise dip on them during the 2022 offseason, but they went with the continuity. They kept with the whole keeping the band together kind of approach. And so nothing was really uncertain throughout the offseason. We knew that the Saints had a very talented roster. We knew that they had a talented enough coaching staff. We knew they had a very, very good defense that had been a top 5 scoring defense in the most recent years. And so there were expectations internally and externally that the New Orleans Saints would be a playoff team, would be a 10-win team, would be a good team in 2023 or 2022. And unfortunately, none of those things came to fruition. But at the time during the offseason, there wasn't a lot of uncertainty. There was actually a lot of confidence. Now, coming out of this disappointing 7-10 finish for the New Orleans Saints, there's a lot of uncertainty going into this offseason. Where will Sean Payton be traded? Will Michael Thomas be on the roster next year? Is Dennis Allen safe? Is Pete Carmichael safe? Are Ryan Nielsen and Chris Richard safe? I think they're probably the most safe, honestly. And what's going to happen at quarterback for the New Orleans Saints? Will they add another wide receiver? Can they fix the run defense that has plagued them so much over the course of this season? There's so many big question marks for this team here in 2022's offseason going into 2023. And all of them start at the top. All of them start at the coaching staff. So I guess not at the top, right? The top would be like the organization, but Mickey Loomis and Gail Benson, like nobody's going anywhere in terms of that duo. It's going to be interesting to see if Jeff Ireland sticks around or if Jeff Ireland goes wherever Sean Payton goes. Does Kai Harley finally get poached by somebody to be a general manager? There's a lot of different possibilities still up there as well. But the coaching staff is really the thing that everybody's going to put under a microscope, and rightfully so. Coaching staff had a lot of talent on this roster, or maybe we overvalued the talent that was on the roster, but I don't think that that's the case watching them play. The issue was decisions in terms of personnel, when players were on the field, when players were off the field, who was starting when there were situations around play calling and 2nd and 10 tendencies. We all saw it written all over the place that the New Orleans Saints run a ton on 2nd and 10. We saw that come back. They ran 3 times in this game against the Carolina Panthers on 2nd and 10, gained a total of 5 yards. So you look at where the New Orleans Saints are, and there's a lot of real valid questions to ask about what the future of this team looks like. It's very unlikely that Sean Payton comes back to this team. So if that's something that somebody's banking on, I wouldn't get too excited about that. He's going to go around and see, his other opportunities and things like that. Maybe if the right thing doesn't materialize, then perhaps he accepts an opportunity or says, hey, I want to come back. And then the Saints kind of have an easy way out of moving on from Dennis Allen after 1 year because they're going back to Bay in Sean Payton. But That's unlikely. That seems very, very unlikely, in fact. So for the Saints, like, where are the big changes that need to happen? A lot of people will make the argument for the head coaching change. I don't think you want to enter that realm for a second year in a row. The last thing, being in quarterback hell is one thing. Being in head coaching hell is a whole other thing. So I could see this organization riding it out, but I could definitely see this organization making changes elsewhere on the coaching staff. Then after they do that, they have to solve the quarterback problem, because as of right now, the Saints don't really have a future at quarterback, right? If Jameis Winston stays on the roster this offseason, which would shock the living crap out of me, but if he does, then yeah, they've got a quarterback for 2023. But what about after that? What about 2024 and on? You're trying to answer the quarterback problem 10 to 15 years. And if you don't have a 10 to 15 year solution, you have a quarterback problem. As far as I'm concerned, teams like the Dallas Cowboys might have a quarterback problem, because have they really answered the question for the next 10 years? We don't know, right? So there's so many different pieces. And I think Dak Prescott's a really, really good quarterback. So they're probably fine. And I'm probably hyperbolizing a little bit. But you know what I mean? Like, as long as you don't have a starting quarterback, a franchise quarterback on your roster, you're in rebuild mode. You're constantly trying to get that right, or you're at rebuild mode at that position. And you're constantly reshuffling that room. So I watch and I look at the New Orleans Saints, who don't have an answer at quarterback, who might not have an answer at head coach, who don't have an answer at offensive play caller. And those are the three most important spots for you to have as much of an answer as you can possibly have day in and day out in the NFL. You have to have those questions answered. If you don't have those questions answered, then you have no questions answered. That's kind of where the New Orleans Saints are. Now, I don't want to make it all doom and gloom. These questions are answerable. It's just weird going into the offseason with those question marks. When you had 15 solid years of Sean Payton and Drew Brees, this is strange. This is strange for the organization. This is strange for Saints fans. This is strange for Saints media covering the team. But it's fun. I'm not going to lie to you. It's fun, because that uncertainty creates so many different possibilities. Like, how right could the Saints get things over the course of the offseason? Just as right as they could get them wrong. Look, they got things wrong in 2022. The continuity, cohesion, keep the band together approach didn't work. I don't think they'll do that going into 2023, right? Not beyond their head coach. And so with that being the case, there's opportunities to get things really, really right, really, really quickly, especially while the rest of the NFL could potentially be making some terrible decisions. Miami Dolphins potentially moving on from Mike McDaniel. Get out of my face with that. Like, that would just be the worst decision that Miami could make. But if you're enticed by Sean Payton, you're enticed by Sean Payton. Could Sean McVay end up retiring? Does that open up another opportunity there? There's so many of those question marks around the NFL. And the New Orleans Saints, unfortunately, just kind of join the middle of the pack in terms of having to get those questions answered. But there will be lots of opportunities for them to do so, and there'll be lots of opportunities for them to get things right, at least to start with. We'll have to see by the end of the 2023 season if they indeed did. Same thing happened to them in 2022. Felt like they made a lot of the right decisions. Once things played out, you can tell that they made the wrong decisions. So how do they fix that? They got to go a different direction in 2023, particularly on the offensive side, because that's what we saw lose them this game against the Carolina Panthers, 10-7, in a game where Sam Darnold threw for 43 passing yards, 43 total passing yards. Carolina Panthers had 32 net passing yards, completed 33.3% of their passes, 1.9 yards per attempt. Come on. That can't happen. That can't happen. And that can happen. It happened in Carolina, though. It didn't happen in the New Orleans Saints. By all intents and purposes, the New Orleans Saints should have won this game, and now they didn't. And that means that they have a very uncertain offseason ahead of them. All right, coming up next, what are some of the changes that must be made going into 2023? We kind of discussed a little bit of them, but let's get more specific here. We'll get to all that as we continue on with today's episode of Locked On Saints. And today's episode brought to you by Tommy John. Listen, I love Tommy John. I have a few pairs of Tommy John loungewear that I absolutely love. And especially right now when the winter mornings can get a little brutal, like it's getting cold here in New Orleans by our standards, right? By the Louisiana standards. So my tip for you is to get warm and do so with comfort. And you can do that by grabbing Tommy John loungewear so that you can be cozy wherever you go. When you start the year off with Tommy John, you're going to be so much more comfortable. You're going to be able to do everything better. Tommy John loungewear, pajamas, underwear have dozens of comfortable innovations and luxury soft tri-blend micro modal fabrics. I don't even know what that means, but it sounds fancy as all get up. in a 4-way stretch, not a 3-way stretch, not a 2-way stretch, not a 1-way stretch, a 4-way stretch. That's more stretches you've ever seen. It's more way stretches that have ever been in pants. I don't know. But they got 20 million pairs sold and thousands of 5-star reviews from people that absolutely love Tommy Johns. Make sure you go and get yours today because everything is backed, of course, by their Tommy Johns. Best pair you'll ever wear, or it's free. Guarantee. Get 20% off of your first order at TommyJohn.com/lockedon. That's 20% off right now at TommyJohn.com/lockedon. Today's episode of Locked On Saints is sponsored by BetterHelp. Yeah, no, I've been a big time supporter and advocate of therapy. I wasn't always that way though. Like it was tough. It was tough for me to get to the point where I felt comfortable going for it and everything. And it's hard to get to that place. It's even harder to find the right match. And that's why I love BetterHelp. Everyone deserves to feel their best, and BetterHelp helps and makes it easier to get it started. It's the world's largest therapy service. They've matched millions of people with professionally licensed, vetted therapists available 100% online. You hear that? Matched. You know why that is? You join, you take a questionnaire, and they go and find a therapist that fits you and your background according to the information that you give them. It's really cool. Doesn't get any better than that. So make sure you go and check them out. No waiting rooms, no traffic, no endless searching for the right therapist. They'll take care of it all for you over at BetterHelp. Get unstuck today with BetterHelp. Learn more and save 10% off of your first month at betterhelp.com/lockedon. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/lockedon. All right, family, continuing on with today's episode of Locked On Saints. The New Orleans Saints have some changes that need to be made on their roster. They have some changes that need to be made on the coaching staff. So let's break all of it down here as we continue on with today's episode of Locked On Saints. Thank you very much for making us your first listen of the day. For your second listen, make sure you go and check out Locked On Sports today as well. Get all the news around the world of sports. Some incredible things happening in Buffalo as well as across the NFL in support of Damar Hamlin, who is like tweeting. He's like FaceTiming teammates and everything. It's so cool. So if you want to know more about what's going on around the league and around the world of sports, make sure you go and check out Locked On Sports today, wherever you get your podcast and on YouTube as well. All right. 3 changes that the New Orleans Saints must make this offseason. Let's start at number 1. Regardless of how you feel about head coach, I'm not confident that the Saints will make that change. So I'm going to leave it out. But if they made that change, then they're obviously making that change for a reason. But I do think they need to make a change at offensive coordinator. This is not me headhunting. This is not me like coming at, Pete Carmichael or anything like that. It's just that it didn't work. It didn't work. And look, as far as I'm concerned, he deserved an opportunity if there wasn't a better candidate. I don't know if that was true, but he deserved the opportunity nonetheless. And I'll never take that away from him. However, I don't think he deserves a second one. I'm just going to be honest. I don't think he deserves a second one. And that stinks because this is a guy that did so many things right for the New Orleans Saints for so long in his time with Sean Payton. But it's clear Sean Payton as the play caller made the difference. Pete Carmichael as a play caller, not the same guy, right? Not the same offense, not the same system, not the same anything. And so we saw a lot of things, very predictable tendencies, running on 2nd and 10 over and over and over again. The sort of refusal of using Taysom Hill and Alvin Kamara in 3rd and 1, 3rd and short situations, even 4th and short situations in some cases. Having Alvin Kamara off the field on 3rd downs as a whole. Different personnel decisions, like back in Tampa, we think about that play where they took all of their top 3 wide receivers off the field and had, Taysom Hill and Kirk Merritt running a 2-man route at one point in a pivotal part in the game where Andy Dalton just welcomes sacks, it looks like sometimes. And so I think that you have to make a change there. And not only do you have to make a change here, and I think that this goes beyond just Pete Carmichael's individual performance as a play caller. I don't really think that this is just about him. I think you have to go away from the Sean Payton system if Sean Payton is not your coach. If Sean Payton is not your play caller, change the offense. Go venture. Go do something new. Get away from it. Because he's the reason why it works. Sean Payton's system is Sean Payton's system for a reason. It wasn't the Pete Carmichael system. It wasn't the Dennis Allen system. It was the Lombardi system, which we've seen, in Los Angeles, how all that happens. It was the Sean Payton system. So get away, go away from it. Like stop with and this is a part of the continuity and cohesion thing that I've talked about before. Like go as far away from it as you can if you need to, right? And the Saints started to do that toward the end of the season. Like very few screens that they were running, a lot of the run game, all of that. Like they wanted to be a defensively led run first team. That didn't work either because the offense couldn't get it done. The defense did. 43 passing yards allowed to an NFL quarterback out here in these streets in a real deal situation. In the NFL, somebody passed for 43 yards in a game in the year of our Lord 2023. And they lost that game. Why? Because of the offense. Fix the offense. So that's got to be number one. Number two, which goes along with that, kind of where I started to go there, is the offensive scheme as a whole needs to change. Getting away from the Sean Payton system, getting away from the Air Coryell / West Coast. No. That's Sean's. Sean will take that wherever he goes to coach, or he'll bring that back with him, and that's fine. But if he ain't there, go to something different. Evolve with the rest of the NFL. And I think that there was an intent to do that. They tried to get Deshaun Watson, and for all the reasons I can tell you that they shouldn't have done that and didn't need to do that, and why I'm glad that that didn't happen, including where they went and spent the money elsewise, right? Elsewhere? I guess both work. But how else they went and spent the money just from a purely football perspective, but they were going for a mobile quarterback. They were going for somebody that could, that I believe has a higher floor because of what they can do with their legs. It was one of the things that we liked about Jameis too, right? Like those of us that watched, is that he also picked up tough yards with his legs every now and then. Now, would I call him a mobile quarterback? Absolutely not, right? You don't game plan for Jameis Winston getting out the pocket, getting loose. You don't game plan for that. You game plan for Lamar Jackson. You game plan for Deshaun Watson. You game plan for Jalen Hurts. You game plan for Josh Allen. You game plan for Taysom Hill. So as far as I'm concerned, like lean into that. Go for that. The mobile quarterback that could be a passer for you, but then that could also, get busy with the legs a little bit. And that leads me to point number 3, quarterback. Quarterback's got to change, right? Like you could bring Andy Dalton back, but I don't know if he's your starter in 2022. He's an incredibly pleasant person, super fun to work with, funny, like all that, great leader, everything, but just didn't have it out on the field when the Saints needed it, right? When this offense needed to cook, Andy Dalton wasn't able to cook for them, right? He couldn't take over a game. He couldn't will a team to victory. He couldn't, he doesn't have that instinct that we talked about in the postcast, that kind of killer instinct that shuts everything, that like gets everything done, right? That will go out there and win you a game. Game-winning drives, all that wasn't a part of the offense. So opening drives was barely a part of this offense, let alone closing with game-winning drives. So, I think you have to make a change at quarterback. That's going to be maybe even the toughest change to make because what do? Do you bring in a rookie and say, okay, go on out there? I don't know if you can do that, right? Not with a second round pick. As much as I think Hendon Hooker would be pro ready if you built the right system for him, which is helpful because the New Orleans Saints would be redoing the system and would be getting a new offensive coordinator in this hypothetical of 3 things that need to change. That would work. That'd be fine. But is he going to be ready to start after the ACL tear late in the college season? We don't know. So if not that, then you go to free agency and you look for a veteran that can run a system for you. You look for a Geno Smith. You look for potentially a Teddy Bridgewater reunion. You go after Jimmy Garoppolo. I don't think you call to trade for Derek Carr. You got to see if he hits the market and then maybe, but I don't think you're going after anybody that you have to commit to. You're going for a bridge, right? Like quarterback's not going to be great for the New Orleans Saints in 2023, more than likely, but if they can be adequate and then the defense can continue to do what they can do and Rashid Shaheed and Chris Olave continue to take their steps forward. Chris Olave, by the way, crossing 1,000 yards in this game, second most receiving yards for a rookie wide receiver in New Orleans Saints history. Awesome, right? Had the fumble, got to work on that. Seen that twice this season. But the weapons are all there. You got Alvin Kamara. You add a running back to that room. You continue to tinker with the offensive line, get that bolstered, and then you have a good enough quarterback that can distribute the ball and one that can win you some games. And bam, like you're cooking in a bad division. But I think in any case, what you're really looking for is just somebody to bridge the gap until it's time for the rookie quarterback to take over, or the young quarterback to take over that they either invest in 2023, fingers crossed, or in 2024. Going up next, let's catch up on the big stories from this past weekend. Sean Payton being requested by the Denver Broncos for a meeting. The Saints approved that. What could the Saints get in return for Sean Payton if he were to go to Denver, what's going on with Michael Thomas, and what's going on with the Locked On Saints podcast now that we're done with the season. Spoiler alert, we ain't going nowhere. Got that coming up for you as we continue on and wrap up today's episode of Locked On Saints. If you're not done with football just yet, the Ultimate Pro Football GM app is one of my favorite apps that I have because it's a super fun mobile game that allows you to take control of an NFL franchise or of a football franchise effectively. And so you work as an NFL GM, you make trades, you manage a salary cap, you can even backload contracts, front load contracts, like it's that intricate. You hire staff, all these other things, you build towards a scheme, you make changes to that scheme, all the things that we're discussing today, you can be doing from your pocket. It's super fun. It's really, really cool. You can compete with your friends. Like we have a Locked On League where we're all competing to see, who can do best over the course of the first 25 years. And that sounds like a long time, but really you can move through that so fast because there's no like timeouts and things like that to where you have to wait 6 hours where you could do that thing again or whatever. It's free to play and it's available to you whenever. So you can play at your own pace. You can play as fast as you want. You can take your time with it. You can really grind it out, all that. And like I mentioned, it's free to play as well. But you can get a 100% free boost to your franchise when you use the promo code LOCKED ON, LOCKEDON, in all caps in the game shop. Just head over to ultimate-gm.com or search on your app stores today, Ultimate Pro Football GM. Don't forget that promo code LOCKED ON for the 100% free boost to your franchise as well. Once again, that is ultimate-gm.com, Ultimate Pro Football GM in your app store. Start your dynasty today. Let's get it. Who Dat Nation, wrapping up today's episode of Locked On Saints. Over the weekend, some big news for the New Orleans Saints. Sean Payton, the Sean Payton cycle is already beginning. And this is going to be one of the most interesting things to happen this offseason because there's only been like 5 head coach trades in the history of the NFL, and the Saints are about to do one. They're about to get one, possibly, probably. He was asked on Fox NFL Sunday this morning how likely between 1 to 10 it would be that he ends up back at Fox. He said a 7. Get on my face. Sean, look at me. You know you're coaching, bro. You know you're coaching, dog. You know. You already know. Stop playing. Stop playing. So what could the New Orleans Saints get if Denver is the place? Because Sean Payton's not going to rule out any teams. He said that the number one thing is going to be relationship between him and ownership, him and the organization, all that. Then quarterback location, all of that stuff. So if Denver's not going to get ruled out because it's a cold weather city, which was my immediate assumption, they do have Russell Wilson, which is a good quarterback, although he was not good this year. I think there was somebody that was counting for a little while whether or not he had more touchdowns than bathrooms in his new house because of the 12 bathroom, or however many bathrooms he's got in his new house that he bought. That's hilarious. But not what you want the narrative to be around your starting quarterback. But Nathaniel Hackett was so bad as a head coach, he got released or fired. He got fired during the first year of his head coaching experience, which I believe was only the 3rd or 4th time that's ever happened in the NFL. So if he goes to Denver, what could the Saints get back for him? Well, many people will expect that the Denver Broncos don't have a first-round pick this season. However, that's not true. They do. They very much do. They have a first-round pick because they have San Francisco's first-round pick from a trade with the Miami Dolphins at an earlier point. So right now, the Denver Broncos could give the New Orleans Saints a first-round pick. And all reports say that the Denver Broncos and New Orleans Saints are on the same page, quote, on the same page when it comes to trade compensation. Now, that does not mean that Denver has already agreed to give the Saints a first-round pick or a package of picks built around the first-round pick is really what it would be. But they understand that that's what the Saints want. That's really all that means. So for Denver to make that move, and for the New Orleans Saints to potentially make that move, they could get a first-round pick this offseason. Would allow them to get a first-round talent at some position or get a quarterback at the end of the first round where they can get the 5th-year option on them, which would be a wise move. They can use their high second-round pick then for the best player available, whatever it might be. So that's what's going on there. Now, the Denver Broncos can't actually formally interview Sean Payton until January 17th, but expect more suitors to come out the woodwork, especially with Monday being Black Monday, coaches getting fired. It's going to be a very eventful weekend or week here in the NFL. And because of that, you're going to be watching to see, okay, that just opened up, that just opened up, that just opened up. Those teams will probably be interested in Sean Payton, and then the bidding war begins. The other thing that happened on Saturday, it was a busy Saturday for the New Orleans Saints, was that they reworked Michael Thomas's deal. So Michael Thomas got paid like an extra game check this week, and then they reduced his $15+ million salary down to just over $1 million for 2022. or 2023, moving that money into 2024 as a roster bonus, which would then be guaranteed by March 17th. So what that likely means is that Michael Thomas will no longer be a New Orleans Saint before March 17th. $32 million or so would become guaranteed to him in 2024 if he's still on the roster March 17th of 2023. So it makes a lot of sense then that the Saints would be moving on from him before then. You don't restructure this contract unless you're planning on moving on from the player, whether it be via trade or via post-June 1 cut, which is more than likely what will happen. And so that makes it so that the New Orleans Saints, instead of carrying around over $20 million of salary cap on their books up until free agency begins, would then instead carry less than that, right? They would carry around, $14 million, $13 million less than that going into free agency. So that's a big deal for the Saints. That opens up a ton of cap space for a team that's tens of millions of dollars over the salary cap again this offseason. So they'll restructure a couple of contracts and then bam, they're compliant, they're good to move forward. So big news there because it effectively means the end of Michael Thomas's time in New Orleans. We'll be breaking that down a little bit more later on this week, where he ranks amongst wide receivers, what the Saints could do in place of that, or like what are the other possibilities? Because there's still a possibility he ends up on the roster. Then what would the New Orleans Saints have to do about that $32 million in 2024, though? It seems unlikely. Okay. What's up next for the New Orleans, or for Locked On Saints, not the New Orleans Saints, for Locked On Saints? We talked about the New Orleans Saints. We know what's next for them. Locked On Saints is what we're talking about now. I just want to kind of give you like a quick summary of what we're doing here over the course of the offseason. Monday through Friday still. That will never change. There will be a portion between June and July to where I will be out of the country on vacation. During that time, I'll try to pre-record some episodes to get you ready. At least 3 episodes of that week, probably 5. I have a problem. I'm addicted to you. I can't go anywhere. The other things to keep in mind are where we're going. Senior Bowl. Just got the credential approval notification today. Combine. Don't know if I'm going to the NFL draft or how that's going. We'll figure all that part out. But either way, I'll be covering the NFL draft. Actually, no, I'm not going to the NFL draft. I'll be covering the draft from the Saints facility, though. So that'll be a lot of fun. And then we'll roll into everything with free agency and all that stuff as well, of course. But so wherever there's an event, I'm going to try to go. So we'll be out there. We'll be #OutCheer, as I like to say on Twitter. So going nowhere. It's the off season, but there's no off season here on Locked On Saints. So I appreciate y'all very much for being here throughout what was a rough season, but was a super fun season for me because it was my first season as a fully credentialed media member, and that's all thanks to you. That's all thanks to you. So thank you very much for riding with me all throughout the season, and I look forward to maybe even more engagement over the course of the offseason. We'll do Q&As. I'm going to do live Q&As. I'll do some bonus like Saturday stuff where you can ask me whatever you want, AMAs, stuff like that. Like we're going to do a lot of fun stuff here. So I got all that coming up for you here on Locked On Saints. So I appreciate y'all as always, man, for making me your first listen and for making me a part of your life. Like how incredible. Like I don't deserve this, but thank you for making me feel like I can, so it's awesome. So I appreciate y'all so much. Make sure you go check out Locked On Sports today as well before your day is over here on Monday. I'll be back with you on Tuesday with the analytics, breaking down this loss, and then also, starting to look ahead a little bit more too in terms of the end of season presser that we'll have on Monday with Coach Allen. So we'll have all that all throughout the week. So I appreciate y'all so much as always, making me part of your day, part of your routine, for saying yes to me and the show. And as always, if you see me, say hi, stop breaking windows out there. You know who you are. I don't know who you are, but if you know who you are, stop it. Stop it. If you need anything else around your New Orleans Saints, make sure you follow me on Twitter at Ross Jackson, NOLA. Hit me up. Let me know how the family's doing. Let me know how you're living. Let me know how you're momming them. Trust Who Dat Nation. I'll holla at you.